Iran's nukes, Greece's debt, China's market, and the New York Stock Exchange's glitz. So much big news this week, you probably missed this. New explosive documents said to reveal that the IRS was not the only arm of the federal government targeting conservative groups. The Justice Department and the FBI might have been conspiring with the IRS to find ways to criminally prosecute those groups. Now, some here say this is more proof the administration was indeed targeting its political enemies. But was it? Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus to find out with Rich Karlgaard, Elizabeth McDonald, Sabrina Schaefer, Carrie Sheffield, John Tamney, and Bruce Japsen. Rich, sure looks like a conspiracy. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, this thing just keeps inching along, much in the manner that Watergate did. The Watergate break-in was in 1972, but it really didn't begin to pick up major steam until 1973 and late 73, leading to, finally Nixon's resignation in 1974. So this is kind of following the same path. And it is picking up steam. The smoking gun really is the Eric Holder Justice Department wanting to review IRS documents before Congress got a look at it.
And, Bruce, it is a violation of federal law for the IRS to transmit directly information to the Justice Department. There were 125 million pages of stuff that went from the IRS to Justice, including information on 113,000 tax returns. Doesn't that bother you?
Well, I think what bothers me is that, we've spent $20 million on this over 3 years, and it's largely been partisan. And I think, to Rich's point, Watergate was bipartisan. You had people on both sides looking into it, and we don't really have that here.
Well, that doesn't defend or excuse the fact that Democrats aren't looking at it. But EMAC, by the way, it was 1.25 million documents, not 100, but 1.25 still is a lot of documents. And it is a violation of law. Here's what one of the memos obtained by Judicial Watch states. In 2010, Lois Lerner and other IRS officials met with the section chief and other attorneys from the Department of Justice Criminal Division of Public Integrity Section and one representative from the FBI to discuss recent attention to the political activity of exempt organizations. Now, you've been covering the IRS for years. You first did it with the Wall Street Journal. Is that legal?
It's not legal. The Treasury Secretary has to weigh in here and authorize any disclosure. And it's in very strict confines of the letter of the law. I'm not sure they can willy-nilly just go off on their own and disclose this information, David. Here's what it looks like. The DOJ under Eric Holder and the IRS along with the FBI were cooking up some reason to put President Obama's political opponents not under audit, but in prison. That is a huge deal. That is such corruption. It's beyond a smidgen of corruption.
Okay, Sabrina, I think EMAC hit the point. Right to the heart. That's why this is such an important story. The fact that the IRS may have been trying to send people to prison because they had different political views is extraordinarily contrary to what we stand for as a country.
Right. What becomes clear is that they weren't simply targeting conservative groups and making them jump through hoops or make their life difficult. They were out to criminally prosecute them, and I think that's what's sort of very alarming. And to Bruce's point, that is why both Republicans, Democrats, anyone in between ought to care about this. This is very much a five-alarm fire in which we're realizing how unwieldy a beast the progressive state has become. And you may agree with this administration, but it's going to eventually change, and you do not want another administration to have this kind of power, so we should all be on the same side on this one.
And John, frankly, when I think of Greece far away, when I think of China far away, I think this is the top story of the week. I think the fact that there may have been a conspiracy to lock up people for their political beliefs is a real danger to our future.
Oh, yeah, and I don't even think it's a conspiracy. I think it was the IRS very clearly trying to curry favor with the Obama administration that, oh, by the way, we are going to partner with you in muzzling certain groups ahead of the 2012 elections. It may have changed the outcome of the 2012 elections. And to Bruce's point, that's the shame. Exactly. It's not bipartisan. That the Democrats are not jumping all over this with the future in mind, per what Sabrina says, is kind of scary.
Carrie, we've had experiences in our past with this. We had McCarthyism back in the 50s. We had Nixon trying to do the same thing. It does creep up every now and again. That's why it's important to slap it down when it creeps up.
Yeah, I mean, the left tries, they always talk about McCarthyism and how wrong Joe McCarthy was with his witch hunt. Why aren't they sounding the alarm here? They try to make it a tin hat thing, that anybody who's talking about this is wearing a tin hat. That's absolutely wrong. This is a violation of the Fourth Amendment, which guarantees against unreasonable searches and seizures, unreasonable passing of documents to agencies that don't deserve them and unlawfully shouldn't have them.
And, Bruce, it doesn't matter what side this is, whether it's Democrats or Republicans do it. When you see this happening, doesn't it, I mean, as a journalist, doesn't it make you mad?
Well, I think, but here's the deal. The Treasury Department's Inspector General and the Democrats on the Oversight Committee, right before this report came out, they had their own report talking about how they didn't think that the IRS or Lois Lerner willfully destroyed documents. So they're not ignoring this here.
Hold on a second. Emac, when you look at some of the statements by the Democrats on this committee, it certainly looks like they're willing to overlook a lot of stuff that the Inspector General for the IRS was specifically saying was in violation of the law,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And by the way, Lois Lerner's emails have yet to be completely found. So you really can't say that you can exonerate Lois Lerner via the Treasury Inspector General. He has said, too, he does not have all of the information. Listen, there's so many problems with this story, so many issues. At minimum, the IRS is being used to go after political opponents who are criticizing government spending. And that in and of itself, big government is a conflict of interest.
Rich Karlgaard, I think that one of the parties that really hasn't stepped up to the plate here are the Republicans. You just have this one committee with former Chairman Issa looking heavily into it. Now they got a new committee chairman. But I think Republicans should be screaming about this issue at the top of their lungs. Why aren't they?
Well, some are, but I think the problem is that Darrell Issa, the optics are not good because he's cried wolf on so many more trivial issues. Suddenly, this is not trivial. This has jumped the tracks to become big-time corruption when it jumps the tracks from an IRS employee, Lois Lerner, to Eric Holder's Justice Department.
Right. Yeah. Sabrina, what about the new justice? Eric Holder is no longer the head of the Justice Department. Is he clear now? Does he kind of wash his hands of all this stuff?
Well, I certainly don't think so. And I think that this is where we have an opportunity for sort of outside groups to really sort of get into the mix here and actually try to persuade the American people of how important this is. Because as everyone here has sort of acknowledged, that this has turned into a partisan fight when it really shouldn't be. And if you actually want to impact public opinion on this, and I think the public actually does care about this, you need to strip away the partisan language and start talking about this in terms of what it means for our freedoms. I think you'll get a lot more support from the public, and that will put pressure on Congress.
John, we had a speech by the president. I know there hasn't been any direct evidence linking the White House as of yet with what Lois Lerner was doing. But in 2010, after the defeat of the Democrats in the midterm election, he came out very specifically and said, you got to watch these troops. It was almost like he was giving marching orders to the troops at the IRS and Justice.
Oh, yeah, it's so apparent here that the IRS was trying to get in good with the Obama administration. We realize there's an opposition ground game for a hotly contested 2012 election. We will be there for you to make sure that they can't fully engage in this election. And it may have had an impact in terms of who won. This has got to be...
Quickly, hang on. By the way, 10 top Democrats in Congress, Chuck Schumer, Al Franken, Max Baucus, were saying to the IRS, you need to look into this. So the reason that Democrats are silent is because they're complicit. Right. We had a lot of congressmen pressuring the IRS.
We got to leave it at that. I'm sorry, ladies, but the fact is, if people should not in this country be considered for going to jail because they have different political beliefs, that is verboten. Coming up next, helping part-time workers work longer hours to make more money. It sounds good, so why are Democrats bashing Jeb Bush for wanting to make it happen?